Be what you can see. Feeling proud of where you live, your community, family, and having hope for the future can make all the difference. Whether still at school, heading off for your first job, or just surviving day to day, where you get support and inspiration from can make all the difference. In this series of podcasts, we get to hear stories of pride, hope, and aspiration. People that have made a difference. Stories of bravery, dreams coming true, and what a sense of community looks like.
Welcome. I have Nick Wymarra with me, who has done quite a lot of work in the community around the 3M community, but we're going to find out a little bit more about your personal passions as well, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit where you live, how long you've lived there, and what you do there?
Okay, so I live in Mananda, Mananda Manura area, 3Ms. I have lived there for most of my life, with my family, children and my grandchildren, and just part of the community.
Really. Yeah. Hard not to be in the community there, isn't it? It's a bit like an island village.
Well, it's like we were talking before, It's a dynamic community, and you sort of you get involved in it. It's kind of that community where there's things happening all the time. Yeah.
Can you describe it a little bit for people that aren't even from Cairns, but even people in Cairns don't really understand what's going on in the 3M community? They just think of Manunda, Manura, Moorabool, and real estate agents say, certain things about there. But actually behind the scenes of that presumption, there is an amazing community and diverse. What does it feel like to live there?
Well, like I said, it's a dynamic community. There's always things happening there all the time. I think it's a very resilient and strong community. There's a real strong sense of being together, as in people who know one another and their families. There's tradition and history. I think it's one of those places where a lot of creativity and creative stuff happens quite naturally, whether it's art or in all its different forms. I think it's a community that has its challenges. Well, I couldn't imagine any other place being home other than being in the 3Ms. And I think that it's also one of those communities where people have a strong sense of who they are and where they're from and what they contribute and what they can bring to community, especially in the sense of just what their families are good at and what they perceive as they contribute to it, both in a cultural sense, and in a capacity sense, building and I like I said, I think it's one of those communities that has its challenges, and those challenges are might be perceived as a strong part of its identity, and or might be perceived as negative, but in other ways too, there's a whole dynamic. I think there's a whole dynamic of togetherness that's not often cited, not often seen. It's an underlying theme kind of thing that runs through there.
Because the communities diverse, but we also know it's a very concentrated area of Torres Strait, Aboriginal, and now migrant communities kind of all mixed together. But there is a sense that they've come from their cultural backgrounds, and somehow there's this tapestry of culture going on. Somehow people have to kind of live together and put that together. You say dynamic and lots going on. And I know myself personally with particularly Torres Strait and Aboriginal communities, there's a lot of rites of passage, like milestone events and tombstone openings, and when a wedding happens, and and there's kind of a tradition that goes along with that. So once there is sorry business going on, then everyone knows what they've got to do around that. And there's an understanding that everything stops. This is what's happening. That family over there will need support. They're going to get food, then there will be a feasting. So that's been interesting for me to learn. Can you explain to me what that's like to live on a day-to-day?
Well, I think I can't explain what it's like to live other than to live it, because it's really about ritual, and in that sense, and ceremony, and commitment and responsibility to family and family well-being, and in that sense, in a bigger sort of in a more cultural kind of narrative, it's probably it underpins a lot of our principles, I think, as Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people, to be in support of one another, and to help one another, and to encourage one another through whatever adversity, and all of that stuff that happens, which is something that's different from communities down south. I've heard so much doing community recovery work that coming up to these communities and working here from people from down south, I mean, they're really amazed at how supportive we are of each other, through adversity, through critical incident or whatever's happened, where natural disaster, we generally have this sense of community that we kind of take for granted, whereas in other communities, like in down south or bigger cities, that's terribly fractured, Whereas for us, I think a lot of us as in Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people, in the 3Ms, we would kind of see that fracture as a symptom of, I don't know, sickness or something, illness, or what I mean? Yeah.
Well, urban drift as well, when people have moved away from where they've come from, and their tight-knit community, and you find yourself in a big smoke, and it's not easy to pull that sense of community. I don't mean to pull you up on it, but there's a lot of assumptions made, like people like myself and that have not lived in what that type of context you're talking about, the cultural obligations, the constant daily connecting with people, checking on that.
Yep.
It's hard to imagine what that's actually like. And so I feel like people in the community take that for granted, like what that really means to have that amount of community notice, like they're noticing each other, right?
Yeah. Well, I can only talk about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. There's this great capacity for accepting people where they're at and what they're going through. I think that happens very much in our communities, and in that sense, as in not accepting whatever it is, the bad and all the other behavior, whatever the bad behavioral stuff, but accepting people for actually where they're at in terms of their life and their their goals and what they want to achieve, and or if they don't want to achieve, or if they're at that stage where they're at a crossroads and they're deciding about stuff, I think that we're pretty good at gauging where people are at, which is why we say, to people that we meet, hey, where are you from? Who's your mob? Who do you belong to? Oh, you're here. How long are you here for? Oh, you came down for this and that. Oh, there's a family gathering on today. There's this constant information thing, but it's also a gauge. It's like a gauge on well-being, and and checking in on people and maintaining connection. Yeah, that's a strong thread in the 3Ms. Yeah.
Yes,
I think,
what I'm most impressed about, and really it's what the broader community could learn.
Yeah.
There is much to be learned from that. So I want to take you back a little bit, because you must have just fallen into this community work. Like, where did you start from when you left school and you headed off into the wide world and you didn't quite know where you were going to end up? What were you doing?
In terms of working life,
Yeah.
well, I started out as a joining the Royal Australian Navy, and you ever seen those movies where there are people sitting in a dark room listening to echoes and trying to track a submarine?
Yeah, that's you.
That was my
Wow.
job. Yeah, I was an anti-submarine warfare technician. Yes, yeah. So we'd pump an echo out into the water and listen for a submarine, and if we could track it, or if we had contact, we could talk underwater. Yeah, and that was that was my job for about
Did you
five
ever find
years.
one?
Yes,
Oh
yeah, I did.
wow!
We
Oh
tracked a
wow!
Russian submarine, and this is 30
What
years ago.
out?
In Western Australia, it was 120 meters long, and it was doing fully submerged, and it was about 100 and something foot underneath the isothermal layer, they used to call it.
Wow!
And it was doing 30 knots, a nuclear submarine off Western
So
Australian
that's pretty
coast.
purposeful.
Yeah,
They were going somewhere, right?
yeah. Just a
Wow.
big piece of machinery, 30 knots. Anyway, but yeah,
So
that's where I first started
yeah,
working
wow.
as well.
See,
Yeah.
that's an interesting background because that I don't know what skills you learnt that then you transferred over to finding the hidden enemy within or something. I don't know. There's got to be something there. But so you're on
Yeah.
boats. How did you get off the boats?
Well, when I met Muriel, I had to basically give up uh, going to sea. I had a goal of wanting to stay at sea and work on ships and whatever it was, tourist boats or whatever. But yeah, but I had children, so
Ah.
and they were well. I had children, and I had children and children. So there was a lot of children to look after.
Yeah. But also
But that
you,
was
you
good.
start to
It wasn't
value
a
that, don't you? You want
yeah,
to be with them. Like it's
yeah,
not like you're trying to get
yeah.
away
No,
from
it
them. You
wasn't
want
a. It wasn't a. Well, I like to say I gave it up. Without a second thought. But that wasn't it. Is you've got to slowly cut the string on
mm,
on the rope. So
mm,
and it was difficult because then I had no other skills to go to. There's
mm.
not much that was available.
Yeah, not much
Yeah.
call on the mainland for
No.
radar
No.
tracking.
Yeah. Or listening to submarines
Yeah,
on
that's
sonar.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. There wasn't. So
So,
yeah.
what was your first opportunity then? Now, what took you? Because that is very
Yeah.
commendable to
Yeah.
give up a career path to then focus and give proper attention to a family.
Mm.
So, and obviously
Yeah.
you're still with your beautiful wife, so that's obviously paid off, right? Good on you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what happened then?
Yeah, I don't like to say I got the opportunity. I'd like to sort of more put it that I was led into an opportunity
Hmm.
to um, just help people in the community.
Hmm.
And it started out with after school care programs and being the guy who ticks children off on the bus, when they get off and off the bus and make sure they've got all their gear. And it was involvement in those little kinds of jobs that sort of got me more interested in
Mm,
working with people.
yeah.
Yeah, people obviously thought I had a, the right personality, I think, to
Mm,
do that kind of
hmm.
work. And I enjoyed working with kids,
Mm,
or well, people in general.
yeah.
I love it.
30 years
Yeah,
on, still doing.
still
So,
doing.
yeah, well, we don't always focus necessarily
Yeah,
on what people's job title is, but in actual fact, your job is a bit of a calling. There's no doubt, I think. y-
yeah, I
y-
think it's a calling. Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
call it. Yeah, that's what I'd call it. It's not
yeah.
a. It's not a. Yeah.
It's not a run of the mill job, is it?
No, it's not. It's
Mm.
not something I decided on. It's what I mean. It's
Mm.
kind of something that happened,
Mm.
and I had to embrace the happening.
Yeah. Well, the world changed too, though, didn't it? Like in terms of
Yeah.
acknowledging that well-being and community resilience was important, and it really costs the community quite a lot if we don't have those things in place. So, tell me a
Mm.
little bit about so community recovery you work with.
Yeah. Well, currently, yeah, I'm just doing some temporary work for the state government in the community recovery hubs. So that's helping the community in the Douglas Shire at the moment recover from the impact of Tropical Cyclone Jasper.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So it was like um, 13,000 houses, and and it's a big chunk of the Shire that have been impacted by flooding and rain, and and landslides and things like that. So
People can't imagine. They think cyclone and see the category and wasn't much, but actually it was the weeks after that.
The weeks after. So pretty much after the cyclone, that's when I was called in, along with some other people to provide that community recovery response in terms of helping people to, I don't know, access support services and and get a little bit of money to help kick them along a bit, because I mean a lot of people just got out of their houses with with nothing but the clothes on their back. So,
and even then they were mostly in their 90s. Like it was scary stuff. So okay, look, I really give you credit for staying in this role, because you would have had many experience and hard times. I suspect it's not always there would be disappointments in a job like this, but you've had some proud moments. I know. I've seen we've already talked about some of them, so in other episodes, but can you talk to me about some of these proud moments? What's one particular one that you've had in your time?
Well, I was part of a church group, and one of the things we were trying to do was raise young musicians so they could be in the church, and we were just we were basically giving people skills, so they could fill in, and so I started teaching these kids in our church how to sight read and play piano, to play guitar. I think it was just piano and guitar, at the start. And fortunately, some of the girls, I think 3 of the girls we worked with, went on to join the Gondwanaland choir. And and they became quite, very accomplished singers. They ended up touring the world. They ended up working with like world famous artists,
Felix from Cat Empire.
Felix from the Cat Empire, Peter Garrett.
Yes, Peter Garrett singing at the Opera House.
Yes, they had numerous. They managed to. They went to Switzerland. They went to the UAE. They went to China. They went to all these places to perform, and it was just amazing, because just by doing little things like instilling in children that the confidence, I think, to learn something, practice at it, work at it, develop all the muscle memory or the skill, and the ability, and then they went on to join the choir and just took that. It was just like a step for them, and then to hear them sing, I mean, I still listen to their songs. It just makes me cry, like it's just so,
absolutely,
it's just, wonderful.
I'll put the link in the description too, but if you go and give yourself a treat and have a listen to particularly the show Spin Effects Gum, which was the evolution of that, but special. Have the tissues ready. It's pretty special. But that I love what you just said then about exposing young people to an experience, and then somewhere in the cells that stays, and then they go to the next experience. They don't often know where it came from, right? But you know your exciting bit of that little part of that bigger story. So can we take a moment and go back just even a bit before that project, when we're talking about the healing program that happened, that resulted in the CD, which again I'll put a link, but this Murray Street CD, that was a particularly, it says music unites, heals and inspires us. And you and I both have connected on this, that music really can save lives. It really
there's a lot of micro skills, in that you develop in music and songwriting and all that stuff that actually gives you, that contribute to a really your capability to navigate life,
and find them submarines,
and it's
there's one,
and things like things like listening to songs in a meaningful way, deciphering lyrics
Yep.
and understanding the meanings and what the artist is trying to say and communicate, and
Mm.
yeah, and in what context, and
Mm.
all of that, there's that requires a level of deeper listening than
Mm.
would just normally the average listener,
Mm.
the average music listener would have,
Yeah, well, there's some tricks to the trade too. I mean, like
yeah.
if you learn and unpack what music's actually doing and the chord progressions and the tricks that musicians use to drag
Mm,
you.
mm.
I don't know if you've stood in the supermarket and found yourself crying for no particular reason, and then realize there's music going and it'll be a Celine Dion song or something. You go, oh, it gets me every time.
I've been in Woolies and thought it was a nightclub. They were pumping R&B.
Have a little dance down the aisle. But it go the other way too, because I know you're a songwriter,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and of a little bit of note, by the way. But the process of deciphering your emotion or observing someone else's emotion and finding the words, then putting that to music that
mm,
matches the words,
mm,
so that when someone else listens, that emotion somehow translates to them, and then take it the next level where music can be universal with any language. So even if you don't understand the language being spoken, you can still feel the same emotion.
yep,
Can you
yes.
tell me a little bit about that songwriting process, how that goes for you?
Well, after Murray Street, I think before Murray Street too, there was this whole process of um, just object writing.
Right?
Yep, which is basically taking 10 minutes out of your morning and writing about how a coffee cup feels or smells, how what a caterpillar looks like, crossing the, climbing across your table, um, but then incorporate every one of your senses: feel, touch, smell, sight, and also your aesthetic sense. Your concept of beauty. And write that into what you're trying to say about this caterpillar crossing the table. But that was a process that actually helped me heal a lot and work through a lot of the trauma, especially in the wake of Murray Street.
Yeah.
And it's something I still do today, which is just take the 10 minutes and write about whatever it is. Even I could be outside smelling ghost gums, and so you write about that. You write about whatever it is that's in front of you at the time, but it gives you a sense of grounding,
Yeah.
and I think that's where your best creative stuff comes from, when you're totally grounded in the moment, and then bring all of that good stuff out, that songwriting and or creative skill out,
Yeah.
or creative stuff out. Yeah, I think that's where it happens. Yeah,
Yeah, I really love that. The and that is
yeah,
something you can do without even feeling particularly talented or special. Like, some people try to put musicians up on this pedestal when actually, and that's where
it's
poetry comes in as a
mm,
starting point,
mm,
isn't it? That then can turn into lyrics. But the idea of just observing your world, and anyone can do that anywhere,
yep,
anytime.
yep,
You don't even need a pen and paper anymore. You can just do it on your phone these days. But
mm,
being able to commit it to let's say, piece of paper or digital,
yep,
and then review it, and then the discipline. So I really love the point you make about that it is a 10-minute a day exercise to really
yeah,
exercise that
yeah,
mental muscle that goes on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then it sets your day up then to look for um,
Mm.
something beautiful that floats by, in the ether, wherever it is,
Yeah.
to grab onto that, and it programs your mind to look for that kind of stuff and look for that artistic thing,
Mm.
that's there. Um, but it also, I think it's a really good way to put all of those emotions down on paper, and and get a good map, and then you can review it later, and you might not like it, but still, it's what you were there at the time. um, I don't think anybody really creates something firsthand and they love it, first off. There's always this process of, you know editing or whatever it is, you know, to bring it
Sometimes you
down.
only take one line and you put that into the next song, and then you take about a bunch of those, and then you turn that into, and before you know it, then that becomes a song. Like,
Yeah,
you know, that
yeah,
you've got to
that's it.
trust that process. don't
Yeah,
you? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So you have a song. We're going to play a little bit of this song. Can you tell us a little bit about 3M Blues? What's that, and where did it come
Oh,
from?
wow. But 3M Blues came about when we went into I voluntarily gave some songs over for a project called the Songs of Applewood, and it was run by anyway, it was run by a record label in Brisbane, and they went nationally and they chose artists from all over the country, Indigenous artists, asked them to submit the songs, chose the best songs, and they ended up picking 7 of us. Then we went for a week in Brisbane, and it wasn't in Brisbane. I forget the suburb. It was out in the country, but we recorded in this old church, and 3M Blues was kind of finalised in that space. I had it as a song that I had it on the, you know how you have something on the simmer
Yep.
project, and then
Yeah.
yeah, I had it in the back of my mind, but it was a really good opportunity to record it. And so 3M Blues was about life in the 3Ms, and how it's challenging, and sometimes you can feel like you're in a community where you're unseen almost, but you're there. And but it's also a song about, you know, well, this is where you'll find me, you know, you'll find me down at Rain Trees by the bridge, you know.
Yeah.
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 I'm poor, but you see eternity, and I feel the road through my shoes. Through my shoes, you might think I need to wake up. Just gotta shake off those 3Ms.
Is there a fishing spot in? Or you got to go all the way to the Esplanade, I suppose. But yeah, that's all they need there, isn't it? Is a good fishing spot, and then it'd be right.
The other song that came out about
yeah.
it was Wandering Bird.
Ah.
Yeah, and that was about parents in the 3Ms who experience, you know, so the child goes missing, doesn't come home before it's dark, and you're wondering, and you know, you spend your time praying and thinking, where is this child, you know, and yeah.
And then they wander in, and you want to throttle them, but then you want to hug them. You know, ah. It's a catch, isn't it? Yeah. Wow. So we look forward to having a listen to that. So you started music. Obviously, that's been a big part of your life for you to be able to do what you do.
Huge part of it. Yeah.
When did that start?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was 6. My dad taught me, you know, how to play guitar, and he was also a musician.
Yeah, right.
Yep. Had a
So
band.
really, probably in your mum's belly, I'm sure he was
Basically,
playing.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think
right.
so. Yeah,
You would have been listening to music all the way along.
Yeah.
So Dad was
I
a bit of
actually
a
remember
muso
being
as well.
6 and singing Rod Stewart while Dad was playing guitar. You know, We Are Sailing. You know.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's where the boats come from.
That's probably
let's blame Dad. So Dad was a muso.
Dad was a
Performing?
musician. Yeah, he was in a couple of bands, but one of the bands he was in was called the Drifting Cowboys, and they performed.
There's the boat analogy again.
Yeah,
Drifting
and they
Cowboys.
performed on Thursday Island on TI. Yeah,
there you go.
Had pretty regular gigs, and
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be interested to know if anyone's actually heard the Drifting Cowboys or danced to them at the Torres pub there.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
It's
Wow.
interesting too, because you know they were like a really multicultural band. You know, he had Japanese friends that he went to school with. You know, well, Torres Strait, you know, very multicultural.
It is
very, you know, a lot of influences. You know, and all that.
Yeah, especially with the Merchant Navy and everything up there, the people come from all over for that. Wow. So, okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit around, you kept mentioning about Murray Street.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people do have a memory of Murray Street that's not necessarily good. And we all went through that. And actually, even the Prime Minister came to honour that
Mm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What
Um,
happened? And particularly
well,
for you, you were working right at the time, so
yeah, I was working for an Aboriginal medical service, which was just basically across the creek from where the incident happened. You know, and I can remember the day it happened. I can remember exactly when I heard the news, the spot I was standing in at that medical center, and that was 10 years ago. You know, I can I can recall what the events were. It was just like just things just come to a stop. You know,
mm,
when you hear news like that, and so my first thought was, I remember thinking the first thought was, well, how did we miss this? You know, being a medical service, how did we miss this family? Where did we fall down? What was it that that where did we fail to engage with his family to support them? You know, at the time, because I was working in the social and emotional well-being, part of that medical service. I think I was the coordinating the counselling and support team then. Yeah. Um, So the day after it happened, I got a call from my manager, and she said, "Do you want to volunteer to do some support work in?" It was a Saturday in Murray Street, and I said, "Yeah, sure," because it was just police, and it was a really
yeah.
surreal thing. I actually remember the night before being in rain trees going to Woolies, and I'd never ever seen Woolies like that. Everything was just quiet. There was no music, there was no noise. People were just in there grabbing whatever they could. It was just this eerie silence, after that. It was just this, like, everybody was,
Time.
I think the whole community was in shock. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that lasted probably a week or more for some people, or more.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Um and then I remember thinking on the Saturday, on the Friday night, I was thinking, because I'd been in counseling and support teams, and we work in those fields, so we kind of understand human behavior a bit more than the average Joe. But I was thinking, okay, well, the people who are able, mentally strong and able, and have self-awareness and have the capability to deal with this tragedy will do pretty well, and those that don't are going to cope pretty badly. And so, following, we had 6 months of um, uh, suicides and things like that, from that tragedy. And then in the meantime, we were doing all this support work in the community in Murray Street and the 3Ms, around any issues that promoted say things like community well-being and supporting the families of the victims, and
mm,
all that kind of stuff. Um, it was a huge event. It had a lot of
mm.
impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we know now, especially now with social and well-being, that we're not islands. Like, even if you
No,
feel
no.
isolated, you're still a part of a bigger jigsaw puzzle. And if you take your piece out of that puzzle, it doesn't get replaced.
Mm.
It just is a gap.
Yep.
And even if you don't know, like, I talk to young people, they go, "Oh, these people know me and I don't even know who they are." It's like aunties and friends of
Mm.
aunties, and they're watching. They're
Yeah.
watching you grow and they care. So if you don't
Yeah.
know that, that's only because you haven't asked or put yourself in the situation to hear that person say, "I care about you."
Yep.
So we learned something about that through this process, didn't we? Because there was a lot of sports clubs and school teachers and uh, the network around this family of
Yep.
children
Yep.
that were massively impacted.
Yep.
And we realized we need to value each other.
Well, that was the core of our
Mm,
work in the following 2 years of support after that.
right.
It was all around uh, initiatives and strategies that kept that um, invited the community to be together, to come together on whatever they were, events, community events, or getting to know your neighbour.
Mm,
Um, Things like being responsive to family needs in community.
Mm.
I think a lot of single mums, still do it. So we're doing it tough then, and it was being responsive to things like that and giving people the proper support they needed so they could, you know, um, I don't know, realize bigger goals and dreams rather than just trying to get through today and survive and live,
Mm.
Yeah, and then the other bit of the support was introducing like creative activities that would help the community work through that whole trauma, especially kids and young people, and promoting the proper messaging about the tragedy and all of that, but also encouraging, like I said before, good ways of coping with stuff.
Yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
get to hear from one of those young people, and she's
Mm.
actually recognised herself on the CD cover today. She went, "Oh, that's me!" And so that
Yeah.
10 years on, those young people are now 21, 22, going
Mm.
into their first jobs and their career, and so there's that residual memory in the cellular brain. They're going,
Yep.
"Oh, I remember that good feeling," even though it was at a very traumatic time. It's almost like out
Mm.
of that comes these extreme moments of joy that it's like the opposite, extreme opposite. If you have this real low, then this real high
Yep.
does make a difference. So we've seen real impact. So
Yep.
if you have a listen to Shakaya's podcast, oh, what an inspiring young woman. I was so excited. And she loves parades, and I love parades.
That's so encouraging for me too, knowing that 10 years on, that Chikay is doing so well.
You wait till you hear
That's
her
wonderful.
episode. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Love
out of
that.
that's become this the Apex parade float, and they're just
yeah.
going for it. I
Yeah.
love that. I love dancing in the streets. So anyway, my little passion. But yeah, so I think
Yep.
that look, I'm out of all of this, like you have had all these amazing experiences and you're still 30 years on working in this field and supporting people to do amazing things. What's your hope? What would you, if you had that wand, like what would you choose for your 3M community? What do you think is possible?
On a personal level, I think it would be to leave a legacy that gives them hope and courage and resilience, either through the life I lead or through whatever projects we're participating and interacting with people in community with, Um, on a family level, um, it would be that I think that legacy of being able to embrace opportunity and regardless of all the molds that people build for you, to be bigger than that and to be who it is they want to be, and how exactly in terms of their identity. Yep. And my wife and I always talk about those three things in her social work framework, which is things like developing identity, building purpose, and from there, taking the authority in life to be able to, take your rightful place,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rightful place. You
Rightful
have
place.
the right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
yeah.
right. That's something
Yeah.
that people don't often take for, no, I don't want to say granted, but actually honor that they've got the right to reach their dream, like anyone.
Yep.
It doesn't actually matter if, like, your cultural context is one thing and then your life circumstances is another.
Yep.
It's not necessarily the same thing. Then you've got opportunity, like whether you had the right school teacher that went, you can do that, or the right parent, or the right family friend, or the community leader, or whatever it is that gives you the little kickstart and prod towards the right thing.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you get to choose that.
Yeah. And if anything, what I'd like to see is also just a lot of good strategic and and supportive measures in community, especially in the 3Ms, to build capacity and build capability for people. Yeah, and to see okay, well, life is difficult. We do have adversity. We do have all these challenges, and we can cope with those in ways that are not helpful and ways that are helpful. But then there's also the question about developing the skills and ability to navigate life, And I think in a cultural sense for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, it's right there in front of us in the connections we have with each other and with our families and within our roles and particular responsibilities we take on, I think that happens quite naturally. Sometimes with families that are not so functional, it's not working well. And then with families that are really functional and working well, that's really clearly defined.
I do love the ability, particularly in the Torres Strait community, that I've seen, that if you need to just shift over here to live in this family for a while, there seems to be this extended network that I've never seen in other cultural contexts. I mean, I know that there's there's a lot of cultures that have the holistic approach. You've got grandma living right there with the young ones, and there's this intergenerational thing going on. But in the Torres Strait community especially, there's this idea that, okay, you're not doing so well at the moment. I'll look after those kids for the time being. And, there is the traditional adoption as well. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about stepping in when it's needed. And, I really, really admire that. I just find that something incredible.
Maybe that's, because of history and because of culture and all of that, and all of that, but it's really a thing that we should be celebrating now.
Yeah.
That particular capability for us to do that, our ability, our natural ability, to be in that space, natural helpers and all of that,
Let's face it, sometimes that auntie cooks better and you get better feed over there. I want to stay at that house.
My wife was telling me there's families who are the damper families, so they're really good at making damper. Then there's the trifle families and the scone families.
Oh, I do love a fried scone.
There's the summer family. They're the gun at making summer,
Yeah, I love that one too. That curry calamari. Oh my gosh, I thought I'd never like that. I thought, calamari, you can't touch that. But wow. So I think, look, again, Nick, you've hovered on my radar in the outskirts. I've seen you in projects and seen you around. And I'm just really excited to finally have sat down and met you. And we have this connection around music, and how amazing that we're surrounded here at the community radio station. They've loaned us their studio for today. And so I'm really feeling that sense of music surrounding us. But thank you, and thank you for the work you've done and the impact you've had. I really, really honour that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I think it's been a real privilege to just be in the community and be part of that. It's a real privilege to do that. Yeah.
Well, we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Cairns Safer Streets is a multi-agency, co-located group of state government representatives delivering innovative projects through community and whole-of-government partnerships. We have developed a place-based approach in Cairns West, enabling innovative strategies addressing complex social issues. Thank you for listening to Be What You Can See. Thanks to our partners, Arts Nexus Studio and Cairns Tropical Writers Festival.